and it's been kind of taking a back seat and almost really been sort of exclusive to the Hispanic community over the last, 20 years. We're starting to see it across the board in all demographics now. So cocaine is starting to make a comeback as well. And a lot of the prescription opiates that we're seeing, there's still a big problem with benzodiazepines, specifically Xanax. And so pay attention to your 17-year-olds, because that's primarily when they're using it. Before they're really getting into heroin, they're starting to use other prescription medication, and a lot of Xanax use and a lot of benzodiazepine use. The reason that I talk about those current trends is because there are certain attitudes that we take in the so-called harder drugs versus the less harmful drugs. And I kind of want to spend a minute and debunk those myths. There are...
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Bob. We have some seats back here also, if anyone's standing up and wants to come back here as well.
Yeah, please feel free to grab a seat back here. Sit wherever you need to sit. I love that we have such a big crowd here. Make yourselves comfortable, Boys, if you want to sit on the floor back there, by all means, have a seat, relax. Or come up front, whatever you want to do. Talking to my kids. So, it's important for us to talk about current trends and the so-called more dangerous drugs. But I want to sort of debunk this myth, because here's what we do, is we take an attitude overall on things like marijuana, alcohol, and nicotine. And we think, and we like to say, a lot of those are socially acceptable, and they are less harmful, and they're not, the heavy drugs, right? But I want you to pay attention to the numbers. I want you to pay attention to the numbers. Oh wait, how am I getting this? Oh, there it is. Okay. So first I want to point out 3 specific drugs that we, overall, because they're socially acceptable on some level, that we think that they're less harmful. But I want to point these out because these drugs right here are the setup to addiction. They are the setup to doing the so-called more harmful drugs. Toxicity-wise, no doubt about it, opiates and heroin are absolutely toxicity-wise the most dangerous. But by number, they are not. Alcohol is an interesting drug. It almost is a rite of passage that we give our kids. And a lot of the teenagers that I work with, they started by drinking alcohol. And guess where they start? Anybody? In their own home, right? Because I would rather them drink at home than go out there and get in trouble. And a lot of parents take that attitude, right? And when you do that, you are saying it is okay to consume this drug as long as you do it here, and you're setting them up to think that it's okay to just have a free-for-all with that, right? And so I want you to pay attention. Other than nicotine, so nicotine is absolutely, by the number, the most toxic and dangerous drug that there is worldwide. It kills more people than all the other drugs combined. That's nicotine, right? Alcohol is second to that. There are more problems caused and more deaths caused by the drug alcohol than there are by any other drug except nicotine. And yet we take an attitude that it's the lesser drug. If we allow our kids to do this at an early age. Now, I'm not, I never take a stance as I'm not a prohibitionist, right? I'm not going to go out there in a soapbox and say, get rid of all drugs. If you want to do that, cool, that's your choice. What I believe is that we properly educate our kids, and that there are certain laws out there that say there's a reason you can't drink till you're 21. There's a reason for that. And if we're allowing our teenagers, because I did it when I was a kid, or something like that, to do that, we are setting them up for failure. Because alcohol, other than nicotine, is by far the most dangerous drug. If you, a little side note and education on alcohol, right? There is no difference between those things. I have listed up here beer, wine, and hard liquor. No difference. The only difference is that the amount of alcohol is in lesser volume in beer versus wine versus hard alcohol. But if anybody, well, I only drink beer or I just have wine, I'm not touching the hard stuff. It is all the same. And make no mistake about that. I've had many, many alcoholics who have who have lost all and cannot stop come through treatment programs that I've worked at that say, I just drink beer, or I just drink wine, right? You can get just as messed up on that. And so pay attention to that. Marijuana, right? It was, you know, our vaping is our hot topic right now. It's all over the news. But, and marijuana is no different than that. But if we go back a couple of years, that's the hot topic, right? We are in the middle of a marijuana revolution right now. For some reason, when we make something legal, all of a sudden people think it's not harmful. So the message that I want to give about legal drugs like cannabis or alcohol or prescription medications or nicotine is that legal does not mean safe. Legal does not mean safe. If you have a teenager and they are pushing back on marijuana and telling you it is legal, it is medicine, it's not a big deal anymore, as a parent, push back the other way. Because even, so you can research marijuana use, right? And you can get all kinds of pro-marijuana websites. People will tell you all kinds of stuff about it. There are some medical benefits. I would be completely ridiculous to come up here and say there's no medical benefit to certain cannabinoids and CBD oils and different extracts. There's absolutely medicinal purposes for it. But no marijuana or cannabis advocate anywhere in the world will tell you that it's okay for teens to do it. Even the ones that are pro-marijuana are not going to tell you it's okay for teens to do it. There's a reason that we have the laws that state you have to be a certain age. And I will get into brain development in a minute, which is why we need to keep our kids from doing this more than anything, is that their little brains are extremely susceptible to damage from these drugs before full development. They are roughly fully developed around, coincidentally, the age of 21, right? I got news for you guys, and if the guys get mad at me for saying this, it's the truth. Women are smarter. It is absolutely the truth. Women's brains develop sooner than men's brains develop. Women's brains develop in the part of the brain that is responsible for making good decisions. Up here, it's called the prefrontal cortex, around the age of 22, 23. Men, around the age of 24, 25, or maybe in my case, 51. But brain development is one of the things that we are stunting with marijuana use. And if we're saying it's okay for our kids to smoke pot, what we are doing is saying it's okay for them to damage their little brains before they are developed. And using marijuana is one of the first setup behaviors that anybody, so it would be ridiculous for me to say that everybody that smokes pot is going to end up being a heroin addict. But I have never in my life met a heroin addict who didn't start with marijuana first. Never. Right? Occasionally you will get the person that we call an accidental addict, right? The guy who, the man or woman who has legitimate pain issues. Maybe they got in a wreck or something. And we're getting a hold on this as far as the medical community is going now. But 5 years ago or so, when doctors and prescriptions were just readily available to anybody with very little regulation, you could have a toothache and your dentist inadvertently give you a prescription of Vicodin at a moment in your life when you're extremely stressed, and next thing you know, you're addicted to opiates. We do have those cases. But primarily those who are addicted to more dangerous, toxic substances, such as heroin or methamphetamine, almost always start with the so-called lesser drugs, like marijuana, like other forms of cannabis. Nicotine is, it comes in many forms. One of the things, so I'm going to lead into vaping with nicotine. And I want to tell you why we're in the pickle, a lot of why we're in this position or this crisis that we're in now, and seeing all the severe dangers that are now coming out of the news, is because nicotine has always been a problem. We all know about that. We've gone from the time, when I was a kid, you could smoke in a hospital room. You could walk around with it and nobody was saying anything about it. We know the truth about nicotine and about smoking, and everyone has the message. Over a 10-year period, when we really started getting the message and not allowing ads to be put in certain magazines or to be on TV or to target kids with the little cartoon camels and things like that. When we started putting our foot down and a lot of the big tobacco started getting sued and all that stuff, California population of smokers dropped in half within a 10-year period. And it went from almost 25% of the state of California adults used some sort of nicotine product, primarily smoking, went down to less than 12% in a 10-year period. And so our anti-smoking talks and the truth about nicotine in general and smoking, we got the message. That's what we need to start doing about vaping, because we need to cut this epidemic in half. And so when people know that smoking is dangerous for you, and it would be ridiculous for me to sit up here and to say that vaping isn't less harmful than smoking. Smoking anything will kill you. I don't care what it is. If you are inhaling smoke on a regular basis, you're going to get cancers, lung diseases, emphysema, heart problems, chronic bronchitis, all kinds of stuff associated with smoking itself. There are a lot of studies now coming out exclusively about cancers and emphysemas and lung diseases associated with marijuana use as well. But it's hard to get those numbers because most people that use marijuana also use cigarettes and vice versa. And so it's hard to differentiate the two from each other and get accurate studies. But I will tell you this, that if you smoke anything, it's eventually going to kill you. You know, if you smoke cigarettes today, do yourself a favor, do everything you can to stop. We're in such a time now that people have gotten a message about smoking that I don't know about you guys, but when I'm walking down the street and I see someone smoking a cigarette, I'm almost like shocked by it now, because not that many people smoke anymore. Tons of people vape. Everybody's vaping, right? Because we were sold this thing that said that vaping is the alternative that's not dangerous for you. And there are studies that for the adult populations that used it for harm reduction, right? Smoking cessation is what vaping manufacturers put it out there. This is going to help you get off of smoking cigarettes. It has worked for the adult population that was already addicted to cigarettes, that wanted to get off those cigarettes and get on to something that's less harmful for you. It has worked. But the problem with it is in the marketing and in the delivery and in the fruity flavors and in the way that we've been sold it, it has been sold to our teen population as a non-harmful, cool thing to do. And what's happened is we have watched over the last 5 years or so the teenage population in vaping just exponentially grow. Everybody is doing it nowadays. The numbers are astounding. The numbers are astounding. I have the numbers up here, but if I remember correctly, 12th graders that were surveyed, something like 37% of 12th graders are using vape products, right? That's a lot. That is a lot. And the reason for that is because we've been sold this lie. We've been sold this lie. Now, I'll tell you about the other end of it, right, is that I have a friend, Gary, who's had several heart attacks. He was a drug counselor under me in a treatment center that I worked, and he's a wonderful guy. And he had 3 heart attacks, and his family called me, and they said he's in Henry Mayo Hospital. And I swear to God, I showed up, and he's outside in his little gown with his little thing hooked to him, and he was smoking a cigarette, right? God bless Henry Mayo, they're a non-smoking campus now. I'm so glad that they did that. But this was back before. And so 3rd heart attack, and my friend Gary's sitting out in front, and he's smoking a cigarette after just having a heart attack from smoking cigarettes, right? That's how strong nicotine is as far as an addictive substance. Gary switched over to vaping products and continues to vape today, and his health has dramatically improved. For that population right there, they're not sold a lie. The problem is that everybody is believing now that it's non-harmful. And so our teenagers are grabbing a hold of it. So let's specifically talk about vaping. Vaping comes in many delivery systems, right? If you are not educated, there are so many different vape delivery products out there, and so many ways for our kids to hide that they're vaping, and so many ways for people to do it right in front of you and not even know that they're doing it, that if you are not educated as a parent, please do yourself a favor and research and look at and find out exactly what they look like. They come in every shape and size. They have vaping products that look like credit cards. They have vaping products that look like memory sticks for computers. They have ones that look like little teardrops. And then they have these big old, they call them mods, right? With the thing and the tank and all the different stuff. And it's interesting, when that whole thing started taking off, there's a picture. Those are different mods. There's one on the left, right, with the big old unit that's holding juice. When that started taking off, I was reminiscent of being a kid. So I was a marijuana user. And when we were kids, and any teenagers or younger kids like mine that are sitting in the room, when I say the cool kids, I want to call myself on that. The cool kids who were not cool at all, who thought they were the cool kids, we used to show off our little pipes for marijuana and our different bongs and look at our different stuff and the glass this and the different products, and it was this thing. That's what goes on with those bigger products is they have different designs and stuff engraved on them, and they have gold-plated ones and different flavored juices and all this stuff that makes us think, look what I got. And it's almost like a vaping status symbol or something, right? And if you don't know about these products, do yourself a favor and educate yourself on these products, because your kid could be doing it right in front of you. If you walk into your kid's room and suddenly you're smelling fruity smells and odd odors that weren't there before, and they try to tell you, oh, it's incense that I'm burning, or it's whatever. If your kid's burning incense in their room, they're covering up some other smell, first of all, right? And if you smell any of that stuff, the smell gives it away more than anything. Here's the nature of addiction, right? We have outpatient treatment, and we provide group counseling. And our group counseling sessions are relatively short in comparison. Like, we're never sitting there more than an hour and a half at a time before we'll take a break or something like that. And we have people that will get up and use the bathroom, and after we're done with our sessions, I'll go in the bathroom and it'll smell like that fruity flavor. And I'm like, really? You can't wait an hour and a half? You can't go an hour and a half without using vape products, right? That's the nature of the addictive, that's the addictive properties of the nicotine. One of the other problems with vaping is that the delivery of, because we've been sold that it's not as harmful, when you watch somebody who vapes, pay attention to how they do it. It's not like, even smoking cigarettes, right? It would be smoke a cigarette every couple hours or something like that. And you smoke the whole cigarette, you put it out. With vaping products, if you watch, it's hit after hit after hit after hit after hit, non-stop. And if they're in an environment where they can do it, then it's non-stop. They might be able to not do it if they're inside a building that doesn't allow it. But I guarantee you, watch them, they're going to my bathroom during the IOP groups and vaping in there, because that's the delivery system, is hit after hit after hit after hit, right? What we're seeing in terms of numbers is 37.3% of 12th graders use vape on a regular basis. That is everywhere across the board. Santa Clarita is no different than anywhere else out here in the United States. 37.3, that is a huge number, right? And so every teenager that we get just about uses vape. And what they tell me is every kid that they know uses vape. And so that number right there is probably low, because they get these numbers. These numbers are put out by the CDC and by SAMHSA and by NIDA, and they do interviews basically with 12th graders. And so, there's going to be a certain percentage there that are going, I don't do it. I've never done it. Nobody I know does it, right? Which is not the truth. Every kid that I talk to, when they're in an environment where they feel like they can tell the truth, they say everybody I know does it. Everybody I know does it. And it's a big problem. Parents are throwing their hands up because they don't know how to combat it. Teachers are throwing their hands up. Administrators at school don't know what to do about it. They have rules and they have regulations and they have a lot of ways that they want to combat it. But kids are doing it right there in class with the teacher in the class. And so it's a big problem. A 10% increase in the last year, 2017 to 2018 is when they did the study. And it keeps going up, and it keeps increasing. 1 in 10 eighth graders, right? 8th grade. Something to be noted about drug use that you may not know, because I look at a little self-disclosure. The first time that I used marijuana, I was 10 years old. My son right here is 10 years old. I look at him and I think there's no way. There's no way, right? 10-year-olds are using it, right? Most drug use starts between the ages of 12 and 17. Between the ages of 12 and 17. In today's world, it's closer to 12. So 1 in 10 8th graders that are using it, is probably a low number. I can almost guarantee you that it's higher than that. 60%, 67% say it's easy to get. I've already told you that. Every kid that I talk to says everybody's doing it. If I wanted to do it, I could do it, right? And like I said, this was a couple of weeks ago I put this on. 2 confirmed deaths that I read a couple of weeks ago. Where are we at now? Like 6? Yeah. And just recently, a few days ago, 1 in Los Angeles County. 1 in Los Angeles County. I want to tell you about a 15-year-old that came to our treatment center a year ago. He never enrolled in our treatment center, and I'll tell you why. Because on some level, I have been sold the lie as well. So these parents call me and they say, hey, our kid needs treatment. And I go, what is he doing? He's 15 years old. And they said he's vaping. And so I had a real candid conversation with the parents, and I said, look, is that all he's doing? Because I've been sold the lie, right? Is that all that he's doing is vaping? And I said, to tell you the truth, most of our kids that come to us are doing far more dangerous stuff. And if you put him in this environment, I'm afraid that he may get exposed to other stuff. And so let's work with him with the vaping. I started seeing him privately and working with him and working with his family so that I could help him. And the first time that I met with him, I said, oh my God, this is no different than any other drug. He had been hospitalized 4 times in that year for overdosing on nicotine. Overdosing on nicotine. I go, wow, I've heard of that, but it's not a common thing. And he says, yeah. He goes, a lot of my friends have overdosed on nicotine, but I'm the only one who's gone to my parents and said, I need to go to the hospital. Severe sweats, severe nausea, breathing problems, anxiety, feels like his heart's coming out of his chest. He's cold, sweating, and he needs to go to the hospital, and they said it's a nicotine overdose. I said, how do you overdose on nicotine? Don't you know when you're getting enough off of that vape? Right? Because they have a number of how much nicotine is in. And you know what he told me? He said, because they're illegal, here's what my friends do. Anybody who's under the age that wants to vape, they're ordering pure nicotine juice online. Anybody can do it. And they're getting the pure nicotine juice, and then they're getting the fruity flavors that you can put in the delivery juice, and they're mixing it themselves, and they're not chemists, they're 15 years old. So they're going, here's some nicotine, oh, that looks good, here you go, my friend. And they are smoking stuff, vaping stuff, that they have no idea how much nicotine is in this. That's his case, right? And so I had to talk to him about, he needed an education on the dangers of nicotine. Nicotine is poison. It's poison. It will kill you, absolutely, 100%. And so, that's the kind of stories that we're getting now as far as nicotine goes. I want to, as far as the numbers go, these resources, if you want these resources, see us afterwards. There's a lot of resources. What I want to say about the different resources that are out there is that there are tons of educational resources and tons of ways to get help. We live in a world today, so the resources are available, but do yourself a favor and find your resources where you can get more information. When I sometimes get the opportunity to do different talks on brain chemistry of addiction or whatever, and one of the things that I will tell my audience is that anything that I tell you, if you think that it's not true, find out the truth and let me know and call me. If I'm giving you bad information, I want to know that stuff. And so do your own research and let me know if I need to change up what the information that I'm giving you. What I'm really doing is I'm kind of tricking people into going out there and doing their own research, right? Which is the goal for me. But resources are available, and they are absolutely available to everybody. This number here, we're gonna allow some time for questions at the end. So if you wanna know anything about what's going on, we'll be taking questions, and just text them anonymously to this number. I wanna talk to you about what I think is the most dangerous part of vaping. There are a couple of different components to it. So first of all, when anybody who uses any type of an addictive substance, and we're specifically talking about nicotine here, is automatically, because of that use, at a greater risk to become, first of all, full-blown addicts, and second of all, to sort of graduate to other substances. Far more likely, those kids who vape are far more likely to do other addictive substances later on. Second to that is that if we're allowing our kids to do this, we are setting them up to not learn healthy coping skills for the reasons that they're vaping. To combat the peer pressure, to combat the stressors of teenage life, to combat the I wanna be cool thing that's going on out there. If we're not teaching our kids how to implement healthy coping skills, and we're saying, the vape takes the stress off, go ahead and do it, what we are doing is we are setting them up and teaching their brains how to be addicted to other substances. It's the same thing that we do with a lot of other substances. When we model this, when I come home after a long, hard day at work and I tell my kids I'm having this beer to take the stress off after a long, hard day, what I'm telling my kid is that alcohol is the answer to their stressor. And I am setting them up to use these drugs as a coping skill for their ongoing stressors. And what we need to do is we need to teach our kids how to take deep breaths, how to get out and exercise, how to meditate, how to have talks with adults that will educate them, how to say no to peer pressure, how to have these healthy coping skills that are gonna help them through life. The biggest problem with vape is that I'm setting myself up and I'm setting my brain up to be addicted to other substances later. Another thing that is a significant danger when it comes to vaping products and teenagers, specifically I'm gonna talk about teens using it, is that any teen who is using vaping products that has not been taught on how to say, I'm not about that. It's funny, I have old school lingo and I work with teenagers and so sometimes I'll say to the kids, I'm like, so how do you combat pressure? What do you say to them? And they go, what would you say, Bob? And I'd say, I'm better than that. Miss me with that stuff. And when I use terms like miss me with that stuff, they laugh at me because I don't have current lingo or whatever, right? The kids do. But that's the message I want to give my kids, right? Is what do I say to the people that are doing it? What I tell them is I'm worth more than that. And miss me with that stuff. Go somewhere else. Because here's one of the other bigger dangers, is that kids that are hanging out with other kids that are doing things that are not transparent and out in the open, that have secrets and are hiding things from their parents, that crowd right there is the same crowd that is doing other stuff. And if I'm in that crowd, I'm gonna be exposed to those other drugs, I'm gonna be exposed to those other behaviors, and I'm gonna be far more susceptible. And once I have said yes to vaping, after my parents have been, these guys since the minute they can listen to me, these poor guys, I'm immersed in the world of drug addiction and recovery, right? And so every conversation every day is, every time I see someone drunk on the street or I see somebody obviously under the influence, I'm like, pay attention to that, boys. Let's see what they're, it's teachable moments for me and my kids, right? They're probably sick of it. But if I've been hearing it from my parents, and I know how bad it is, and I know that I shouldn't be doing it, and then I'm doing it anyway, I've crossed the line that sets me up to do other stuff that I'm not supposed to be doing. Because once I've crossed that line, I have, it's easier to cross the next line, and the next line, and the next line. And so, hey Dino, have a seat, buddy. Thanks. He gets into stuff. He's curious, I love that kid. So I want to end with this before we go to questions. I want to hit three different sort of populations. I want to give some tools to parents. I want to give some tools to teens, and I wanna give some tools to those that may have already crossed into a line of addiction, right? And so I wanna start with those who may already be using drugs or may already be addicted to nicotine. And I want to offer you, how do I get out of that? What do I do if I'm the person who's sitting here listening to this today, and I'm going, okay, but I'm already hooked into it, what do I do? What you do is you find somebody that you trust, and you ask them for help. We, as citizens here and as loved ones, you know, there's not a person that I know that doesn't know somebody that doesn't struggle with substance abuse or mental health issues. And if I don't understand that it is a medical issue, that the people who use are not bad people, that anybody can cross into a line of addiction, if I haven't educated myself and I don't understand that, I may be guilty of not providing a safe enough space for someone that I love who has a problem to be able to ask for help. So we have a job to do to allow that safe space so that anybody who's suffering can ask for help. That's the big message to those who struggle with addiction, is ask somebody for help. Somebody for help. We live in a world today where it's almost easy to throw your hands up when it comes to drugs. They are stronger, more available, more accessible, and more dangerous than they have ever been in history. That's the world that we live in. There's so many drugs out there that we almost cannot combat it anymore. But we also live in a world today where treatment and recovery and resources and people getting clean and sober, younger, and those resources are more available and more effective and more accessible than they ever have been in history. And so asking for help and getting that help is available to everyone. We just need to provide a safe space. The next crowd that I want to talk to are the teens in the room who may be tempted. You maybe already have tried it. You may think it's a good idea. You may have closed down anything that you hear tonight, because from the moment that I said it's bad for you, you might be thinking, yeah, but not me, right? That's for all these other people. I'm not going to be the guy who dies, right? What I want to say to you is this, is that if you are putting anything into your system that you know can potentially kill you or harm you, that there is some work that you need to do to learn how to value and love yourself. Because if you have done the work as a teenager to know that you are the most valuable person in the world, and that you are worthy and you're lovable and you are just an amazing human being, we are all that. If I believe that about myself, why would I ever put something in my system that's going to kill me, right? And if you value yourself, so what I want to say to you is that you are worth so much more than the things that are out there that you think are going to make you look cool. That if you have the guts or the education to stand up to the peer pressure and say, I am not about that, that later on down the line, when you're watching those people who didn't have the guts struggle with these addictive substances, sometimes for the rest of their lives, that you will look back and thank yourself for taking that stance. I guarantee you will. If you want to have a real candid talk about what that looks like, catch me someplace else and talk to me about my own recovery. I did not get my stuff together until I was 37 years old. And I wish to God I would have been able to say no when I was a kid. But I just didn't have it in me because I wasn't hearing this, right? And maybe this is the most important message, because our audience here tonight we've targeted parents of teenagers or parents of young kids, right? Is that if you're sitting in the room tonight and you have teenagers or you have young children, here's the message: how do I keep them from doing this? How do I keep them from doing it, right? You learn how to talk about it. And you talk about it openly, and you talk about it honestly, and you talk about it daily. It's not a one-time conversation. It is an everyday conversation. Addiction is by far the most pervasive and wide-reaching and damaging thing that we have in our world. Yet it's one of the things that we talk the least about. Have those conversations every day with your kids. And if you know that they're gonna do it, or you know that they are doing it, if you have to be the bad guy, be the bad guy. Do anything that you can to get in between them and that substance. When you find the vape products, take them and throw them away. When you see them vaping, don't let them do it. Set a boundary in your house that says, we're not doing that here, right? And have those talks all the time. And if you are, and the biggest thing that we can do as parents is we can be a model to our kids. We can be a model of healthy living. We can be a model of healthy coping skills. We can be a model of what it means to live the healthiest life possible. And so I want to say this next thing, and then I'm going to close. I want to say this without any shame attached to it. Is that if you are modeling behavior that you wouldn't okay for your kids, I want you to take a look at that. There's no shame in that. Anybody can change their behavior at any time, and there's a lot of help available. But we need to be models to our kids. I want my kids to know that they can count on me, that I'm consistent, that I'm not doing things in my life that I'm telling them not to do, you know? I'm transparent with my kids, and maybe everybody doesn't want to take this stance, and that's okay, but here's me and my kids. My kids can look at anything that I have because I'm absolutely transparent. They can open my Facebook, they can look at my emails, they can turn on my computer. I got nothing to hide from my kids, nothing, because I want to be a model of absolute transparency, and I do my best to do that, and I want to encourage other parents to do that. So, you know, we're going to allow some time for questions now. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, just on. Okay, so I'm getting as close as I can here. Okay, so thank you again everybody for coming. It's good, so we keep that for you, Bill. So we're going to open up to question and answer. Like I said, it's good to see everybody here. It's good to see some familiar faces here. We ask you that to be able to send a message out to the community. So, as a parent out here, how many of you, and raise your hand, I've been asked it before, how many of you have been confronted by another parent who says, hey, my kid's talking about all the vaping that's going on in the schools? Anybody here? Out here in Santa Clarita. So, my girls are in junior high school when they come home. We have had vaping retail down into our elementary schools. And so as I voiced in the very beginning, you know, this was born out of 3.5, almost 4 months ago when 2 high school students suffered respiratory failure. So this has been on 3.5 months. We hope that we are pushing forward to have more of these in the next couple of months to reach more of the community. So we're going to go over a couple of questions. And we're going to go with Bill, myself, and Travis and Bob. I'll point the questions out and you guys can answer them. So the first question is going to be for Bill. First question is, what consequences do students face when caught with a vape or other substances?
Our students that are caught, most of the students, if we do get them caught, is with the Hart School District, with our junior highs and high schools. Because that's where most of our students go. They're not the only place we catch them. Their typical consequence is the administration teams, for just the vape product, will look at each student individually, what the circumstances were regarding that incident. They'll be placed on a disciplinary contract, and they go to our TIDE program, where they learn about addiction and some of the other dangers that are out there with the vaping and drugs. If the item they have is actually drug paraphernalia with, if it's a THC vape, which would be the typical drug paraphernalia we would find, they're cited, and then we go through our community court. We have a community court program that we run here in conjunction with the city once a month, and their citation, we run through that, and they would get additional drug education classes. They do some community service and things like that.
Okay, so the next question, I'll answer it. So what is the best way to report substance abuse on the campuses? So you know you have counselors on campus, you also have individuals you trust on campus. On the campus we have the Defy SCV program on all of our campuses. Feel free to contact any of the counselors that are in charge of Defy SCV. But the biggest thing is we always say when it comes to crime, if you see something, say something. So if you see it and you wanna say something, tell somebody who you think is gonna get that information out, it's gonna matter. So the next question is gonna be for, Bob. Where's Bob at? You guys first hang out in the middle there. So what is the best way to approach your child if you suspect they are vaping?
Directly. I mean, I'm not joking about that, directly. Don't be shy in asking those questions. You know, it's funny, we do a lot of work with parents and teenagers, and if you confront your kid on any behavior that you think they might be doing, sort of a general rule of thumb is this, is that if they become defensive about it, I only become defensive about something I have to defend, right? And so don't be afraid to approach on any topic and have those conversations. First and foremost, always approach with love and kindness. Always comes from a place of love and kindness. I love you, I care about you, I don't want to see you go down a certain road, can we talk about this? And as candid as you can possibly be, share your experience with your kids. They do listen to you. They don't listen when we approach them with screaming and yelling and you better or else. I don't know about you, but I don't respond well to that, and I shut down, and we're not going to have a conversation. And so the more kindness and love we can approach, if you are trying to approach your teenager for the first time about vaping or other drug use now, that's fine, and maybe an uncomfortable conversation. If you don't know how to do that, there are lots of people that will help you do that. You can contact me, I'll help you have that conversation. I'll give you some pointers, but always with kindness and love and compassion, and just be direct. Are you vaping? Are you vaping? And know their friends, know their friends' parents, know what they're doing, know what's in their room, know what they're looking at on the internet. If you're in your child's life, you're gonna notice changes. If you're spending time with your kid, you're gonna notice changes in their life.
Okay, so the next question is gonna be for, I'm gonna give it to Travis, really quick. So Travis is the intervention specialist. Some kids on campus, you may see Travis, he's doing a lot of talks on campus regarding some of the stuff we're dealing with. So the question for Travis, first one is, what are the signs I can look for if I think my teen is vaping? Because I know you've been in a couple of houses and helping parents out, so.
Absolutely. Signs are what we look for the most, right? And just like Bob was talking about, you notice when your kid's acting differently. You notice weight gain, weight loss. You notice pictures on the walls. Some certain pictures now move and other pictures get put up. You start to notice those different things. One of the simplest things I always recommend when I talk to when I'm talking to parents is give your kid a hug. Smell them. They will smell differently. It's very easy. It's very simple. You give them a hug and you take it all in. Now that could also be a bad thing for all the guys or girls when they're not. But I say that in a jokingly manner, and it's actually serious. You know the difference in their smell. You know what they're going to smell like. So you want a sign? It's real simple. Pay attention to what they smell like. There's plenty of other ones out there. The simplest one is give them a hug, take a whiff. You're going to learn a lot from it. Or shut the door in the car when it's really hot and roll the windows up. You can figure out that way.
So some of the things that Travis also covered a few weeks ago, I saw him address a parent, was, make sure you take the time to go into your kid's room. It's their space, yes, and you are respectful of their space, but be respectful enough to be part of their space as well. Okay? And I heard them share that with a parent, and they were very thankful. So next one's for Bob. Is addiction hereditary? Good questions.
Yeah, great question. There is absolutely a genetic component to addiction. If a person has one parent or grandparent who has had addiction, they're 4 times more likely to become addicted themselves. If a person has 2 parents or grandparents that are addicted, they're 8 times more likely to become addicted themselves. If you have a family history of addiction or mental health, you are far more likely to become addicted as well. It's not completely genetic. There is some learned behavior, and so watch what we're modeling for our kids as well. But if you have a family history, please talk to your kids about that family history. You know, my boys, I'm a recovering addict, their mom is a recovering addict, we both are riddled with alcoholism and addiction on both sides of our family. You better believe that I'm telling them that if they ever pick something out, they better be real careful, because it can grab a hold of them very, very quickly. So there's absolutely a genetic component to it. The nice thing is this, is that there is also, we can change that in the recovery process. That if you are thinking about getting into recovery and stopping your behavior, that I can guarantee you that that behavior and those genetics are gonna carry on in generations as well. And so by me being clean and sober, I am making a difference in their lives and their kids' lives. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Next question is gonna be for Bill and maybe Travis. If I have confiscated a vape device from my child, how do I test it for THC or other substances?
There are test kits that you can buy. I've bought some before. The one that I have used in the past is called Detectichem. Just simple swabs. They cost about $1.50 per test. You swab the end of it, put it in the little package that it comes in. You break the chemicals on it, shake it up, and it turns purple if it's THC. You can buy them off the internet for any drug out there. They're very simple to use. Like I say, they're $1 to $1.50 per test kit.
Okay. Next question is gonna be let's go with Bob. Kind of throwing them around here. That's why I told you guys to stand in the middle. How is nicotine dangerous? Is it different in smoking cigarettes than vaping? I think you kind of answered that, but kind of go over that again.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Smoking anything is going to be far more dangerous than any other delivery method. It doesn't matter what if you put smoke in your body on a regular basis, you are very likely to have problems with your lungs, such as emphysema or chronic bronchitis, heart problems, cancers. There's a lot of association of diseases that come along with smoking anything, but especially smoking nicotine. But nicotine itself is highly addictive. It is one of the most addictive components or substances that's out there. And if you ask anybody who's in recovery and you ask them what was the hardest thing for them to get off of, some people will tell you it was easier to get off heroin than it was to get off of nicotine. It is an extremely, and I think a lot of that is because it's sort of subtle. It doesn't get you obviously intoxicated when you do it, but it is hitting the same brain receptors that the other addictive substances hit, and it is extreme, and it's setting you up to not learn healthy coping skills, because I can just take a hit off of this, and whew, there goes my stress, right? The problem is that when you start using, coming off of it, it leaves you with withdrawal symptoms that increase any anxiety that you might have. So you get in this hamster wheel cycle of chasing the anxiety with the nicotine and causing more anxiety coming off of the nicotine. So I hope I answered that.
Okay, so next one's for Travis. Come up, Travis. So I know you've been dealing with this because you've talked to a few people about this. Are there any recovery programs for people of all income levels?
Absolutely. You guys don't know it by now. Addiction, alcohol, drugs, anything. It doesn't care if you're white, it doesn't care if you're brown, it doesn't care if you're black, it doesn't care if you're rich, it doesn't care if you're male, it doesn't care if you're female, it doesn't care. It goes across all of everybody. You gotta understand that. It doesn't target one person. When I provide any type of help to anybody, we can get help to non-insured, fully insured, slightly insured. There are plenty of rehab facilities out there that will take anything from anybody at any time. They will work for you. The one biggest common thread of all rehab facilities are they're there to get you the most
statement on that?
Sure.
One of the commitments, so the Way Out Recovery, we opened about 3 years ago. And one of the promises, Melissa Flowers is over here, she's my primary counselor over there, doing an outstanding job. And the promise that we have made to Santa Clarita is that if you call us, we will absolutely find a treatment center for you. You may not get help with us, but we will sit, get on the phone with you, get on the computer with you, whatever it takes. If it takes all day for 3 days to get you into a treatment center, we will commit to do that for you. So if you give us a call, you can absolutely get into treatment. Treatment is more available and accessible today than it ever has been.
Does Bob stay there?
Yes.
Once you're an addict, are you forever an addict, even after rehab?
Oh, great, that's a wonderful question. I don't have time to talk about brain science, do I? But here's what happens is when a person crosses into a line of addiction, what they're doing is they're burning what are called neural pathways into their brain. So I used to say like grooves on a record, but probably half the room doesn't know what a record is. It's like a giant CD. Right? So it's like burning grooves into a record. Although, no, I think LPs are making a comeback. I don't make it a comeback, right? So it's like burning grooves into a record, and once that groove is in there, it is always going to be in there. Now you can learn new grooves. You can learn new healthy coping skills. But you're always going to be, even if you burn a new healthy groove in the record, that other one's always going to be sitting over there. And so once you're in the recovery process, if you don't want to label yourself an addict, cool, don't do so. If you don't want to call yourself an alcoholic, you don't have to. That is not a requirement for recovery. But once you're in the recovery process, you have to figure out a way to live a life that is conducive to the illness that you live with. Just like a diabetic, the same question would be to a diabetic, right? Is if you're a diabetic, are you always a diabetic? The answer is yes, but I can live a life that accentuates my diabetes or my addiction so that you don't even know I have it if I do a few certain things, right? Like check my blood sugar, or in my case, talk to my sponsor or go to meetings or healthy living, right? I had to run and eat healthy, so yes.
So next one, Bill. Since marijuana is a gateway drug, and I know you always reference that in all the presentations you give, do you find that kids you meet in the high schools have to hit rock bottom before they can beat the addiction?
No, they don't have to hit rock bottom. Unfortunately, oftentimes they do hit rock bottom, but they don't have to. We as parents can affect change in our children. Even if you're fighting with your children, a loving parent can affect change with their children with consistent, loving behaviors directed at our children. No matter how angry we get at them, they're our children, and it's our job as their parents to show them the love all the time and change those negative behaviors. They don't have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes it's just they need your attention. So if you give them your attention, you can change any negative behavior.
And this one that dives into you as well. Do they have to hit rock bottom before they can beat addiction?
No, absolutely not. And we live in a world today, I'm amazed, there are more young people getting clean and sober than there ever has been. I go to 12-step meetings, and some of the 12-step meetings are filled with 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and it's such a wonderful sight. One of the things that I like to tell parents is this: if you get your 15-year-old and you're trying to combat their drug use, stay in there and don't give up, because it doesn't always stick right away. But I want you to pay attention to this. If you have a 15-year-old, and even if you have to get in there every day and fight it for the next 5 years, in 5 years you have a 20-year-old who's going to be sober for the rest of their life, and that's a big deal.
So the next one I'm going to give to Bill again. Do you think banning fruit liquids is a good step forward in combating the vaping on school campuses?
Is banning the
fruit liquids.
I don't know. My initial opinion on it, because it is kind of new stuff that's coming out. We don't have the science yet to understand what the vaping is doing to ourselves, to our children. So stopping the sale of it and limiting it in any way right now until science can catch up with the product, I think is a positive thing. We don't have the information, and if we don't have it, we can't make an educated choice. Our children do seem to like the sweeter flavors, all that kind of stuff when they start. So getting rid of it for now is gonna give us a chance to find out truly what it's doing, so we can make an educated decision.
And then the segue into the next one, so just stay there, because it'll go back to the incident that happened, at the high school I've been talking about. How dangerous is vaping THC?
Very dangerous. The levels of THC in the vaping products is much more than it was when other people started using THC back in 2000. Sorry. You know what I can blame you. The THC level is so high, and that's why we're having the THC overdoses. When they do get rushed to the hospital, it's THC toxicity poisoning. It's overdosing on THC, and we can get those heavy doses of THC in the vapes because it's a vape.
Next one's for Bob.
I got a question.
Sure.
Have you been seeing, and maybe I'm mistaken, but have you been seeing high rates of psychotic episodes in young males who are just using marijuana?
It's difficult. We think it's a dual diagnosis. So we do get the psychotic episodes, and we don't know whether it's because we're not experts in it. We don't know if it's a mental health issue or the THC. So we refer them typically to a mental health facility. So we do see it.
The reason I asked him that question is something else to be said about cannabis and the delivery of it and the strong dosages of it, is that in the last probably 10 years now, primarily males between the ages of 17 and about 22, 23 are having first-time psychotic episodes as a result of using marijuana. And some of them, it's lasting psychosis because of the strength and the delivery of the THC in different oils and things like that. And so it's another danger of vaping THC that we need to be careful of.
Then we're gonna go through 4 more quick questions, then we'll be done. These are gonna be for Bob, the next two. Will you experience withdrawal symptoms if you immediately stop vaping?
Yes. The quick answer is yes. Depends on how much you've been using, how often you've been using it, how saturated it is in your system. But some of the withdrawal symptoms that you are going to experience is extreme irritability, anxiety, lack of sleep, or restlessness. It'll feel like you're coming out of your skin. The interesting thing about withdrawal with some of the vape products is that, so with nicotine, it's pretty quick. If you stop smoking today, tomorrow you're going to be going, oh my God, give me one. You're going to be looking for it. You feel kind of coming out of your skin. If a person is vaping cannabis is interesting. If you talk to people about withdrawal when it comes to cannabis, right, marijuana, is that they'll say no, but wait a week or two. Because marijuana doesn't come out of your system like that. It takes a while to come out of your system. So if you stop smoking marijuana or using marijuana in any level, today you're going to feel those same withdrawal symptoms, irritability, restlessness, anger, lack of sleep, loss of appetite, all this kind of stuff about 2 weeks later when it starts to really come out of your system. And so we get a lot of kids that go, I stopped and there was nothing. Wait, just hang on and see what happens. So yes, you absolutely, there's significant and strong withdrawal when it comes to nicotine products.
And then the last question for you, Bob, is there such a thing as secondhand and third-hand smoking with vaping?
We've heard about secondhand smoke for a long time. We get kids sometimes that will test positive for different drugs and they'll say, well, I was sitting next to a guy who did it. The answer is no. You're not going to be sitting next to somebody who's smoking. Even if you get a little bit of smoke blown past you, you're not going to get high off of that. You're not going to feel the effects of that vaping. Now, what a lot of the kids will do is they'll do what's called hotboxing, and especially when it comes to marijuana products. So they'll sit in an enclosed space like a car, and they'll puff, 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 and fill the whole car up with smoke so that everybody in the car is inhaling that stuff. In that case, yes, secondhand smoke. Now, as far as secondhand smoke damage, like we know with cigarette use, that's clear. Is that I had a friend of mine who died of lung cancer. She never smoked a day in her life, but she lived with her brother her entire life, and he was a chain smoker, and she died from cancer from it, right? So we know that about smoking cigarettes. The science isn't caught up enough when it comes to vaping products to know if there's any kind of secondhand damage that comes with vaping, standing next to somebody who's doing it. So we don't know yet. We don't know.
Next question's for Bill. what kind of punishment, and it goes kind of similar with one earlier, what kind of punishment would the school impose on those who are found using and distributing drugs on campus? We're talking drugs, it doesn't say vape pens.
It's difficult for me to speak for the school. The schools have been very proactive and they work with us as far as our investigations and helping us catch the people on campus. So for the school, it depends on the student, depends on the school. So the school will do a discipline contract. There is stuff that they do, and it's individual to each kid based on that student. So I can't really speak to what the schools will do. As far as what we do, again, even first-time offenders, they're cited or arrested depending on the level of the violation. We try and do our community court, which does education. We try and keep them from the criminal court system as best we can if they're eligible for community court. If they're a second-time offender, their case gets filed in Silmar and the Silmar juvenile court system. The attorneys and the judges decide what the punishment is out there.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Better answer for the schools.
Liz Storley is with the Hart High School School Board.
Hi, this is all very interesting. As a school teacher for 30 years, I watch kids go through withdrawal from many things. As far as a school district is concerned, if it's a first-time offense and it's tobacco, there's usually as the officer was saying, there's a program, they go and they learn, and there's more education. If they're caught with paraphernalia that's drug-related, if it's marijuana, then there can be a suspension. Of course, we try to do diversion, we try to give them education, and our first thing isn't to lock them up. But if we find them selling, we're calling the sheriff and we're having them arrested on campus for selling the product or the products that use the products. So your child, until I believe the governor just signed a bill saying that we can't suspend or expel anymore, but we'll see how far that goes.
Okay, so, okay,
Last question.
so if there, any more questions over there? No? Okay. So I'll finish up. The last question is there any way to get drug sniffing dogs on campus to keep them clean? The answer is, we can work toward that angle, but why do we need to get that far into that point? So it has been something that I've been discussing as the captain out here as part of our community policing efforts, pushed forth by Sheriff Villanueva, that we are to get integrated into the community as much as possible. Out here in Santa Clarita, we've been doing that for the past 2 years. So we have asked to get a drug sniffing dog a few times. We're working on some angles, and it may or may not happen. Do we have to get that far to put a dog on a campus where we should be able to talk to our kids and encourage our kids not to do it? So, yes, Ms. McCarthy.
Yes, and if I may add to that, as a former board member for the Wilderness Heart, we did have the dogs on campuses, and so we've tried that before. And if I don't know if anybody was here when we had that, but it was just a few years ago. And we found that kids are very smart, and
Correct.
they're ready for those dogs, and so it didn't stop things. I mean, for some of the good kids that said, I'm not, I'm just not going to risk it. It was fine. But again, if it was just one, it won't solve it. But this was just one other thing to scare kids.
Correct. No, and it's not really to scare kids. So just so you understand, as a law enforcement officer and in law enforcement in general, we have tools. We have all the tools in our belts. We have the tools that we use in the field. Canine is just another tool we have to be able to use to combat criminal activity that's going on or incidents that occur on campus. So it is just one tool. So we'll close up, and I'll thank everyone here in a minute. But just so all of you know, a lot of this, what we've been doing for the past several years and moving forward with this vaping and getting the information and education out to the community is born on a sad note. And it was born on the fact that in 2011 we had 16 people in Santa Clarita Valley die of recreational overdose. And they passed away. We've moved forward. We've tried to get drugs out of the community as much as possible. We have seen great strides over the course of the past few years. With the introduction of fentanyl and other hardcore drugs, last year we had 14 overdose deaths. This year we are up to 11, and 2 of them that happened just 2 weeks ago. 2 people on the same day in their residence, both using heroin in order to be happy about what they do in life. So Bob's absolutely right. You have to be happy with who you are and what you're doing to get that information across to everyone in the community that if you see something, say something, but encourage people to be positive about what they're doing and to pull them away from drugs. We're only here as advocates in order to help all of us in the Santa Clarita Valley to remain as sober as we can, to be the best people that we can, to keep people off of drugs. Vaping is a new avenue that we are seeing in the junior high schools. It started last year, it became significant. We have now reached down into the elementary school level to where we have dealt with that a few times. And as Bob said, it's easily hidden anywhere. And as we referenced and Travis eloquently said, you know, get involved with your kids, become involved with the family as much as possible. We're here and available for any questions, but I want to thank Bob, Bill, and of course Travis for being here, for doing what you're doing. And in closing, I'm a very blessed man to be here, coming back here as a captain 2 years. We are very, very aggressive when it comes to the stance on drugs, when it comes to vaping. It's the reason why we're having this tonight. And I will tell you the same thing that I told in a press conference a few years ago. We are changing some of our tactics. So to those that are out there that are vaping, to those that are out there that are providing vapes to the kids illegally, no more. We are going to be very aggressive over the course of the next few months. You'll probably hear some of it. We're reaching out to our local media. Mr. Jim Holt is always here for us to get the information out from the signal. But just know that we're going to be out there. If you see something, it's not because we have a problem. It's because we're trying to be out there for you and the community to be the enforcers for what some parents can't stand up to do. We're more than happy to stand behind you to be that support for you. So thank you very much for coming out.